The transaction unfolded under the harsh glare of midday sun, yet an ominous shadow clung to it, darker than the deepest night. Boone Delaney counted out coins, each one dropping with a hollow clink into Malachi Brooks's calloused palm. Between them stood 16-year-old Clementine Cross, her presence reduced to that of livestock being bartered. Each metallic chime stripped away another fragment of her dignity, her heart sinking with every exchange. Unseen by Clementine or her father, a storm brewed behind Boone's unreadable gray eyes, a tempest that would soon unravel their fragile notions of mercy, cruelty, and the true cost of human worth. Malachi wiped sweat from his brow, gesturing toward his daughter with the same indifference he'd show a rusted tool. "She's sturdy enough for field work," he grunted. "Eats more than her share, but she'll earn her keep." His words sliced deeper than any whip, wounding Clementine in ways no physical blow ever could. She kept her gaze fixed on the cracked, dusty earth, her patched dress hanging loosely on her thin frame, a patchwork quilt of better days long gone. Boone's weathered hands remained steady as he placed the final coin in Malachi's palm. "The arrangement is settled," he said, his voice devoid of warmth or malice, a blank slate that revealed nothing of the thoughts churning within. Clementine stole a glance at him, searching for a hint of kindness or cruelty, but his face was an impenetrable mask. The silence stretched taut, a rope on the verge of snapping. Malachi pocketed the coins with a satisfied smirk, already imagining the saloon's cheap whiskey. Without a word or glance for his daughter, he climbed onto his wagon and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Clementine stood alone with the stranger who had just bought her, her future as uncertain as the shifting sands beneath her feet. Boone studied her for a long moment, his eyes catching details others might miss. The quiet resilience in her posture, the intelligence flickering behind her downcast gaze, the strength unbroken despite years of neglect. Most would see only a burden, as Malachi had described, but Boone Delaney was not most men. "Pick up your belongings," he said, his tone neither harsh nor gentle. Clementine gathered her meager possessions, a spare dress, a tattered book, and a small wooden doll carved by her mother before fever claimed her. It was all she had, a fragile tether to a past now severed. As they walked to his wagon, a strange sensation stirred within her, as if the very air had shifted, carrying her toward a future that defied expectation. The ride to Boone's ranch was marked by silence, broken only by the creak of wheels and the rhythmic clop of hooves. Clementine sat as far from Boone as the wagon allowed, clutching her bundle tightly. She stole glances at him, trying to decipher the man who now held her fate. His calloused hands spoke of hard labor, his clothes practical but well kept. He didn't seem wealthy, yet he'd paid her father's price without haggling. When they crested a hill, the ranch came into view, and Clementine's breath caught. It was vast, a sprawling valley dotted with cattle and horses, anchored by a sturdy house of timber and stone. Outbuildings fanned out like spokes, each meticulously placed. This was no humble homestead, it was a thriving enterprise. "How long have you lived here?" Clementine asked, her voice barely above a whisper, lost in the wind. "Built it myself 15 years ago," Boone replied, eyes fixed on the road. "Every board, every stone." His words carried a weight that suggested the ranch was more than property, it was a monument to something deeply personal. As they neared the house, a woman emerged, wiping her hands on an apron. She was about 40, with graying hair pulled back tightly and sharp eyes that assessed Clementine with curiosity and concern. "This is Mrs. Adelaide Kane," Boone said, stopping the wagon. "She manages the household." He offered Clementine his hand to climb down, a small courtesy that startled her. Her father had never shown such regard. Mrs. Kane's gaze flicked between them, questions forming in her mind. "Mr. Delaney, I wasn't expecting a guest," she said, her tone carrying the authority of someone accustomed to order. The word "guest" held a subtle challenge. "Not a guest," Boone replied. "Miss Cross will be staying permanently. Prepare the small room off the kitchen." His quiet command brooked no argument, yet something in his demeanor hinted at an unusual arrangement. Mrs. Kane's expression tightened, sensing more to the story. "And her duties?" she asked pointedly. Before Boone could respond, the sound of approaching horses interrupted them. 3 riders appeared, their grim faces signaling trouble. Clementine's stomach knotted, unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. Boone's shoulders stiffened, betraying his own unease. The lead rider, Sheriff Morrison, wore a badge that gleamed in the sunlight. His stern gaze swept over the scene, lingering on Clementine. "Got a report from town," he said, dismounting with deliberate care. "Malachi Brooks was flashing money he hasn't seen in years." The implication was clear, and Clementine's cheeks burned as she realized her father had likely boasted about selling her. "Malachi's affairs are his own," Boone said evenly, "as are mine." His calm suggested he'd anticipated this visit. The sheriff's eyes fixed on Clementine. "Miss, are you here of your own free will?" The question carried legal weight, and she hesitated, caught between truth and the strange loyalty she felt toward Boone, who had freed her from her father's cruelty, albeit through a transaction. "I am," she said softly, though the words felt hollow. Was it choice, or simply a lack of alternatives? One deputy shifted, hand near his weapon. "Maybe we should take her to town, let the judge sort it out," he suggested, his tone edged with threat. Mrs. Kane stepped forward, her voice firm. "Gentlemen, this girl is exhausted. Perhaps this discussion can wait until she's rested." Her diplomacy bought time, and the sheriff nodded. "We'll be back tomorrow morning. I trust she'll still be here." The evening meal was tense, the aroma of Mrs. Kane's stew unable to ease the heavy silence. Clementine pushed food around her plate, each bite feeling like an admission of her situation. "You need to eat," Mrs. Kane urged gently. "You'll need strength for tomorrow." Boone sat across from them, his meal untouched, fingers drumming silently as he stared out the window. "Adelaide," he said finally, "show Clementine to her room." Mrs. Kane led her to a small, tidy space with clean linens and a washbasin. "You can call me Adelaide when we're alone," she said softly. "Speak freely. Is Mr. Delaney a good man?" Clementine asked, the question inadequate but urgent. Adelaide hesitated. "Boone is not what most think he is. Whether that makes him good or dangerous depends on circumstances we don't fully understand." Her cryptic words deepened Clementine's unease. A knock interrupted them. Boone stood in the doorway, his expression serious. "Clementine, we need to talk about tomorrow." "About what you'll tell the sheriff." "What should I say?" she asked, sensing his answer would reveal more about him than she might be ready to know. "The truth," he said, stepping inside. "But not all of it. Tell him your father needed money for debts, and I offered you work to settle them. Say you chose to come here." Clementine's heart sank. "But that's not what happened. He sold me." Adelaide interjected, "What happened and what the law can prove are different. Sheriffs out here avoid gray areas if everyone seems satisfied." Boone's gaze was intense. "The sheriff will ask if you feel safe, if you're treated fairly, if you want to leave. Your answers decide what happens next." "And if I want to leave?" she tested. "Adelaide will take you to town tomorrow," Boone replied without hesitation. "You'll be free to make your own arrangements." The answer was direct, but it underscored her lack of options. Her father had cast her out, and she had no one else. Adelaide's voice was grave. "Staying here has risks. Boone's past isn't entirely behind him, and some might use you against him." Clementine pressed, "What kind of past?" Before Adelaide could answer, the sound of galloping horses shattered the night. These weren't the sheriff's measured hoofbeats but riders moving with reckless urgency. Boone extinguished the lamp, motioning them to stay back. His transformation was swift, from rancher to a man braced for danger. He retrieved a revolver from a drawer, its dull glint ominous in the moonlight. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't come out until we come for you." Outside, Horses snorted as riders halted. Voices rose, aggressive and demanding, punctuated by Malachi's drunken laugh. "He brought them here," Adelaide hissed, her voice thick with anger. "Malachi brought them." Clementine's stomach churned. Her father hadn't just sold her, he'd led trouble to Boone's door. Through the walls, Boone's voice remained calm. "Evening, gentlemen. Late for a social call?" A rough voice replied, "Heard you've been making interesting purchases, Delaney. Thought we'd see what the fuss is about." Malachi's slurred voice cut through. "Told you he's got money hidden. Man doesn't pay in gold unless he's got more." The betrayal was complete. Adelaide's hand gripped Clementine's shoulder. "Your father's a fool. He doesn't know what he's done." Outside, the men dismounted, their movements suggesting a coordinated threat. Clementine whispered, "What aren't you telling me about Mr. Delaney?" Adelaide's face was pale, torn between loyalty and fear. Before she could answer, the night grew heavier with the promise of violence, and Clementine realized her new life at Boone's ranch might unravel before it even began.